Caleb Turner had lived on the open plains of Arizona for most of his life. He was a quiet cowboy who preferred the company of his horses, the soft wind, and the golden colors of the land instead of noisy towns or crowded gatherings. Each morning he woke before sunrise, fed his animals, checked the fences, and rode out across the wide fields to make sure everything on his ranch stayed in order. Life was simple, and he liked it that way. He never expected anything unusual to happen, but life has its own surprises, and one of them was waiting for him on a warm evening at the edge of his land. That day, Caleb had been out longer than usual. One of his horses had wandered off, and he spent hours searching for it. By the time he guided the horse back and headed home, the sun was already sliding low in the sky, spreading orange and red light across the land. The air was peaceful, and the only sound was the steady rhythm of his horse's hooves on the ground. As he rode along a dry creek bed, something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just a stray bundle of cloth. But the closer he got, the more he realized it wasn't just cloth, it was a young girl sitting alone on the dusty ground. Her long, dark hair hung over her shoulders, and her small hands were pressed against her knees as if she had been sitting there for a long time. Caleb slowed his horse, unsure what he was seeing. It was unusual to come across anyone this far from town, especially a child. She looked no older than 8 or 9. She wore traditional Apache clothing, simple but beautifully made, and she looked tired, as if she had walked many miles. He stopped his horse a short distance away so he wouldn't frighten her. "Hello there," he said gently, keeping his voice calm. "Are you all right?" The girl looked up quickly, her dark eyes wide with worry. She didn't answer, but she didn't run either. She seemed unsure whether to trust him, and Caleb understood her fear. He stayed seated on his horse, giving her space. "My name is Caleb," he said softly. "I live just a little ways from here. You look tired. Do you need help?" Still, she said nothing. But Caleb could see that she had been alone for too long. Her feet were dusty, and her small shoulders sagged as if she had been carrying not just her own weight, but her worry too. He slowly reached for the canteen tied to his saddle and held it out toward her. "You must be thirsty," he said. The girl looked at the canteen for a long moment. Then, carefully, she stood up and stepped forward. She took it with small, cautious hands and drank a little. Caleb felt relief wash over him. At least now she wasn't afraid of him. "What's your name?" he asked kindly. This time she spoke, her voice soft like a whisper. "Naya, that's a beautiful name," Caleb replied. "Do you know where your home is? Are you lost?" She looked down at her feet and shook her head slightly. Caleb didn't want to push her with questions she didn't want to answer. Instead, he offered her a warm smile. "How about this?" he said. "You can come with me to my ranch for now. I'll give you food, water, a safe place to rest, and then I'll let the people nearby know we found you, so your family can come get you." Naya hesitated, but after a moment, she nodded. Caleb could tell she was exhausted and simply needed someone to trust. He climbed down from his horse, lifted her gently into the saddle, and then walked beside the horse as they headed toward his ranch. The ride back was slow and quiet. Caleb wanted her to feel safe, so he didn't ask too many questions. Instead, he talked about simple things: the names of his horses, how the sky looked during different seasons, and how the land changed colors throughout the day. Naya listened without speaking. But she didn't look afraid anymore. The gentle sway of the horse and Caleb's calm voice seemed to ease her nerves. When they reached the ranch, the sun had almost set. The sky had turned a soft purple, and the first stars were beginning to appear. Caleb led Naya inside and gave her a clean cup of water and a small plate of warm food. She ate quietly, watching everything around her with curious eyes. She seemed especially fascinated with Caleb's old dog, Rusty, who wagged his tail and sat near her feet as if he already liked her. After she finished eating, Caleb prepared a small bed for her near the fireplace, where it was warm. He gave her a soft blanket and made sure she was comfortable. Naya looked up at him and whispered, "Thank you." Caleb smiled. "You're welcome. You're safe here." That night, after Naya fell asleep, Caleb sat at his wooden table and thought about what to do. He needed to let the nearby community know right away. Someone would surely be searching for a lost child, especially one so young, but he also wondered why she had been alone. Was she separated from her family? Were they nearby? Or had something unexpected happened? He decided he would ride out early in the morning to notify people. For now, all he wanted was to make sure Naya slept peacefully. The next day began quietly. The sun rose over the plains, spreading light across the ranch. Caleb cooked breakfast, fed the horses, and checked on Naya. She was awake, watching the fire with sleepy eyes. When she saw him, she gave a shy smile. Caleb made her a warm breakfast and gently asked, "Did you sleep well?" She nodded. "Yes." "Good," he replied. "Today we'll see if we can find your family." But before he headed out, he wanted to learn a little more about her so he could inform the right people. "Naya," he said softly, "do you know which direction your home is?" She thought for a long moment. "Far," she finally said. "We were traveling." Caleb didn't push her for more. He understood that she might be confused or worried. Instead, he saddled his horse and took her with him into the small town nearby. He spoke to the local community members, describing Naya and asking if anyone had heard about a missing child from the Apache tribe. Some people listened with concern and promised to help spread the word. Over the next few days, Caleb kept Naya on the ranch with him. He didn't want her to feel alone or afraid. He showed her how to feed the horses, how to brush their manes, and how to plant small seeds in his garden. Naya was quick to learn, and even quicker to smile once she felt safe. She followed Caleb around like a small shadow, watching everything he did with bright curiosity. For the first time since he found her, she laughed softly, but enough to fill the ranch with warmth. Caleb felt a gentle responsibility for her, like a protector. He checked the horizon every day, expecting someone to come looking for her. He didn't know when her family would arrive, but he hoped it would be soon. He wanted Naya to be reunited with her loved ones, though a small part of him felt a growing bond with the little girl. Then, one morning, as he was working near the barn, he saw dust rising in the distance. A group of riders was approaching the ranch. His heart lifted. Finally, someone was coming for Naya. Caleb called her over, and she stood beside him, holding his hand gently. As the riders came closer, Caleb saw a woman at the front. She sat tall and graceful on her horse, her long dark hair flowing over her shoulders. Her eyes were sharp, searching for something, or someone. And then Naya let go of Caleb's hand and ran forward with joy. "Mother!" she cried. The woman stopped her horse, climbed down quickly, and embraced Naya tightly. Caleb stood still, watching the reunion with relief and quiet happiness. He had done his part. The girl was safe, and her family was here. But as the woman lifted her eyes toward him, Caleb felt something shift inside him, a connection he couldn't explain. He didn't know it yet. But this meeting was only the beginning of a story that would change all their lives. The moment Naya ran into her mother's arms, the air around the ranch seemed to soften. It was a warm, tender scene, one that made Caleb feel both relieved and strangely emotional. He stood a few steps back, giving them space. He didn't want to interrupt something so important. After all, every child deserved the safety of their parents' arms. The woman holding Naya was Ayana. Even from a distance, Caleb noticed she carried a gentle strength in the way she stood. Her long, dark hair glowed under the morning sunlight, and her deep, attentive eyes reflected both worry and great love for her daughter. She held Naya tightly, whispering something soft and comforting in her language. Naya responded with quiet words of her own, tears of joy running down her cheeks, though her smile remained bright. After a long moment, Ayana looked toward Caleb. She did not speak right away. Instead, she studied him calmly, as though trying to understand what kind of man had taken care of her child. Caleb removed his hat respectfully and nodded. "She's safe," he said in a humble voice. "She's been here a few days. I did what I could." Ayana stepped forward with Naya still holding onto her hand. When she spoke, her voice was smooth, steady, and full of gratitude. You have cared for my daughter. You gave her safety and kindness during a time when she was alone. She placed a hand gently on Naya's shoulder. For that, I thank you. Caleb wasn't used to receiving grateful words. He scratched the back of his neck, feeling shy. I just did what anyone ought to do, he replied. She's a brave little girl. Naya smiled up at him, nodding. Caleb, good, she added simply. Ayana's eyes softened for a brief second. Then she looked at the other riders who had come with her, 2 men from her community, and gave a small signal. They nodded back and rode to a nearby shade to wait patiently. Ayana turned back to Caleb. It would ease my heart to know how you found her. Caleb invited her to walk with him slowly toward the barn so they could talk while Naya followed, still holding her mother's hand. He explained everything. How he had discovered her near the dry creek. How she had been alone and tired. How she had refused to speak at first, and how she had finally trusted him enough to come with him to the ranch. Ayana listened carefully, her expression calm but full of emotion. When Caleb finished, she nodded thoughtfully. She wandered away during our travel, she said. We stopped for a short rest, and she must have walked farther than we realized. By the time we noticed, the sun was setting. We searched all night. Her voice trembled for the first time. I feared for her. Caleb felt a deep respect for her love and protectiveness. She's strong, he said sincerely. She stayed calm. And she had good sense. She didn't wander too far after she realized she was lost. Ayana placed a gentle hand on Naya's head. She has always been brave. But even brave children need someone who will look out for them. And you did that. Her words felt warm, like a quiet blessing. After a few moments of silence, Ayana reached into the small pouch she carried at her side. She pulled out a handmade item, a small woven bracelet, decorated with natural beads. She held it out for Caleb. This is a gift, she said. A small symbol of our people's gratitude. I want you to have it for taking care of Naya. Caleb hesitated. He wasn't used to receiving gifts. Especially not something made with such care. I don't know if I should take it, he said gently. I didn't help her to get anything in return. Ayana shook her head softly. This gift is not payment. It is respect. It is our way of saying we see your kindness, and we honor it. Her tone was sincere, and Caleb finally accepted the bracelet. When he held it in his hand, he felt a strange sense of connection. Not just to Naya, but to Ayana as well. Something unspoken moved between them, though neither acknowledged it. Just as Caleb was about to offer them something to drink before they left, dark clouds began forming in the sky. A cool wind swept across the ranch, carrying the smell of rain. Ayana looked up. The storm will arrive soon, she said quietly. We should return to our people before it reaches us. But as she and the riders prepared to leave, the wind grew stronger, and the clouds thickened quickly. Caleb glanced toward the horizon and shook his head. You won't make it far, he told her. These storms come fast out here. It's safer if you and the others stay at the ranch until it passes. Ayana looked uncertain. We do not wish to trouble you. It's no trouble at all, Caleb replied. You're welcome here. My home has room. And it's better for Naya too. She's tired. Ayana looked at Naya, then at the sky again. After a moment, she nodded. Very well. We will stay until the storm ends. Caleb guided the riders to the barn where their horses could take shelter. The rain arrived just in time. Thick drops began falling heavily, echoing against the roof. Inside the main house, Caleb warmed the fireplace and brought out blankets for his unexpected guests. Naya sat beside the fire with Rusty the dog resting at her feet. Ayana stood nearby, quietly observing the simple but warm interior of the ranch house. Everything was tidy and cared for, showing the effort Caleb put into his home. You live alone? Ayana asked softly. Yes, Caleb answered. It's just me and the animals. There was no loneliness in his tone, just a simple truth. But Ayanna sensed something gentle in him, something steady and compassionate beneath his quiet nature. "Do you not wish for family?" she asked. Not in a pushy way, but out of natural curiosity. Caleb thought for a moment. "Maybe someday," he said, "but life doesn't always bring things when we expect them. I take what comes one day at a time." Ayanna nodded slowly, as if she understood his way of thinking. She took a seat near the fire, and Naya curled up beside her. Caleb brought them warm tea, made from herbs he grew himself. Ayanna accepted it with a calm smile. As the rain continued outside, the evening passed in peaceful conversation. Ayanna told Caleb about her community, how they traveled across the land with the seasons, how they taught their children to respect nature, and how every member worked together to care for one another. She didn't share everything, only small pieces. But Caleb listened with genuine interest. He shared stories, too, about the long days on the ranch, the challenges of caring for animals, and the small joys that came with simple living. Ayanna listened just as attentively, occasionally asking thoughtful questions. Even without trying, they found a natural rhythm in speaking to each other. Every now and then, Caleb caught himself watching Ayanna's expressions as she talked. There was something calm and grounded about her, something that made him feel steady just by being in her presence. She was strong, but also gentle qualities that rarely came together in one person. As night settled in, the storm grew heavier. The sound of rain tapping against the windows blended with the warm crackling of the fire. Naya fell asleep against her mother's side, wrapped in a soft blanket. Ayanna brushed a hand over her daughter's hair, her movements tender and full of affection. "She must have been so frightened," Caleb said softly. "She was," Ayanna replied. "But she is safe now, thanks to you." Caleb lowered his gaze. "Shy again. I'm glad I could help." The fire cast a soft glow across the room, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. A quiet understanding seemed to grow between them, a connection that felt natural, even though they had only just met. As the night grew deeper and the rain continued to fall, Ayanna looked toward Caleb with a thoughtful expression. "Our people believe that certain meetings happen for a reason," she said softly. "Even if we do not understand the reason at first." Caleb met her eyes. "Maybe that's true." She smiled, a small, warm smile that reached her eyes. And in that unspoken moment, something shifted between them. Something gentle and promising. Caleb didn't fully understand it yet, and neither did Ayanna, but the feeling was there, like a seed that had just been planted. Outside, the storm washed across the land. But inside Caleb's ranch, a small, unexpected bond was quietly beginning to grow. In the days after the storm, the sky cleared, the land dried, and life returned to its usual calm rhythm. Ayanna and Naya returned to their people. But something had changed quietly, something that could be felt more than seen. The bond that had begun forming inside Caleb's ranch did not end when they left. Instead, it stayed alive like a soft ember, waiting to grow warmer. A week passed before Caleb saw them again. He had been mending a fence early one morning when he noticed two familiar figures approaching on horseback. Naya rode ahead happily, her small braids bouncing as she waved at him with excitement. Ayanna followed behind, calm and graceful as always. Caleb smiled without even realizing it. He rested his tools and met them halfway. "Naya wanted to visit the man who saved her," Ayanna said with a soft smile. Naya nodded quickly. "Caleb, I wanted to see the horses again." Caleb laughed gently. "Well, the horses will be happy to see you too." And just like that, the visits began. At first, they came only once a week. Ayanna said it was to thank Caleb properly and make sure Naya didn't forget the kindness she had received. But as time passed, it became clear that the visits were not only for gratitude, they were becoming something more, something that brought comfort to all three. Every visit brought new warmth to the ranch. Naya explored every corner with endless curiosity. She fed the chickens, carried small buckets of water, and even tried brushing the horses on her own. Her laughter echoed across the open fields like a little bell, bringing life to the quiet ranch. Ayana stayed close, watching Naya with loving eyes. She helped when needed, talked with Caleb, and slowly allowed pieces of her world to mix with his. Caleb found himself looking forward to their visits more than he had expected. The ranch felt different when they were there, brighter, fuller, almost like a home filled with family instead of silence. He began teaching Naya simple ranch work. She loved learning how to saddle a horse, though she needed help with most of it, and she especially enjoyed feeding the animals. She even named one of the horses Sunflower, because its coat was golden like the morning light. Caleb admired her enthusiasm. "She learns fast," he often told Ayana. Ayana would smile proudly. "She has always watched the world carefully," she said. "She learns with her heart, as much as with her eyes." Caleb liked the way Ayana spoke. Her words always carried meaning. Even simple sentences felt warm when she said them. She had a calmness that made people feel steady around her. Spending time with her felt as natural as breathing. During their visits, Ayana also began sharing more about her life. She explained how her community moved with the seasons, following the rhythms of nature. She told stories from her childhood stories about gathering berries with her mother, helping her elders with daily tasks, and learning to understand the language of the land. Caleb listened to every word with genuine interest. He had always respected the land he lived on. But hearing Ayana talk about it made him appreciate it even more. "I think you see the world differently than I do," he once told her as they stood watching the sunset. Ayana shook her head gently. "Not differently," she said. "Just from another path. But sometimes, different paths can walk beside each other." Her words stayed with him. Caleb began sharing stories too, not deep or complicated ones, but small pieces of his life. He talked about growing up with his father on the ranch, about the things he learned from old cowboys, and about how peaceful the land felt in the evenings when the wind carried the scent of wild grass. Ayana listened with the same calm attention that she showed her daughter. She appreciated simple truths, and Caleb's life was full of them. Weeks turned into months, and their visits became more frequent. Sometimes they came twice a week, sometimes more. Occasionally, Caleb visited their community as well. The people welcomed him kindly, especially because Naya always ran to him with joy when she saw him. When Caleb arrived, the elders greeted him respectfully. They had heard how he protected Naya and had seen the way both mother and daughter trusted him. He felt honored to be welcomed into their circle. During these visits, Ayana showed him how they dried herbs, how they prepared food for long travels, and how they crafted simple objects with great care. Caleb marveled at their skill and dedication. He admired how their traditions were kept alive through every action, every small detail. He also noticed the way Ayana moved within her community, quietly strong, respected by all, someone people turned to when they needed wisdom or comfort. Watching her in her element made him feel something warm and steady in his chest. One afternoon, while they sat near the river that ran close to Caleb's ranch, Naya was skipping stones across the water. The sky was bright blue, and the gentle sound of the river made everything feel peaceful. Ayana watched her daughter quietly. "She has healed," she said softly. "Those days she was lost, I felt the world had gone dark." Caleb looked at Naya, then at Ayana. "She's brave," he said. "But I can't imagine how scared you must have been." Ayana nodded, her gaze drifting. "A mother carries many fears," she said. "But she also carries strength. I trusted the land would protect her. And it sent you." Her last words made Caleb's heart feel heavier in a warm way. "I'm glad I found her," he said. "But I think she helped me too." Ayana raised her eyes toward him. "How so?" "Well," Caleb paused, searching for the right words. "This ranch gets quiet. Too quiet sometimes. Having you both here, it brings life to the place." Ayana smiled softly, and her eyes held a warmth he hadn't seen before. "We feel welcome here. We feel safe." Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, neither looked away. It wasn't a moment filled with loud feelings or dramatic words. Instead, it was quiet, steady, and as gentle as the breeze that rustled the grass around them. It was the kind of moment that didn't need explanation, but despite the growing closeness between them, both were careful. They belonged to different worlds, different ways of life. Ayanna respected her traditions deeply, and Caleb respected the boundaries she kept. Their bond grew naturally, at its own pace, without pressure. Even the people in town began noticing the connection. When Caleb went to the market, people often asked, "Will Ayanna and Naya be visiting again this week?" They smiled knowingly, but Caleb always kept his words humble and simple. "They're friends," he would say. "Good friends." Deep inside, however, he wondered if the friendship was becoming something more, something he wasn't sure how to describe. One afternoon in late spring, something happened that brought Caleb and Ayanna even closer. Naya had been gathering herbs near the edge of the ranch. She had wandered farther than usual, following a trail of small yellow flowers. When Caleb and Ayanna realized she wasn't where she said she would be, their hearts tightened with worry. They searched the fields, calling her name, scanning the horizon. Though nothing dangerous happened, the feeling of not seeing her, of not knowing where she had gone, brought a wave of fear over both of them. Ayanna's face showed quiet panic, even though she tried to stay calm. Caleb felt it too. Together, they walked quickly toward the far side of the ranch. Finally, they heard a familiar sound, Naya's laughter. They followed the sound and found her sitting happily beside the river, weaving tiny flowers into a bracelet. She looked up at them with bright eyes. "Look, I made this." Ayanna exhaled deeply, relief washing over her face. Caleb felt his heart settle back into place. Naya was safe. Nothing bad had happened, but the feeling of searching for her, of fearing she might be alone, made Caleb realize how deeply he cared not just for Naya, but for Ayanna too. As they walked back together, Naya skipping ahead, Ayanna looked toward Caleb with gratitude in her eyes. "You care for her like she is your own," she said quietly. Caleb looked down, then back at her. "I care for both of you," he said honestly. Ayanna held his gaze for a long moment. There was no need for romantic words. The feeling itself was clear, soft, sincere, and growing with each passing day. Their connection had become something real, something gentle and warm, and even though neither of them said it aloud, both knew that the bond between them was deepening. Step by step, moment by moment, their hearts were beginning to move in the same direction, slowly, respectfully, and naturally. The story between them was just beginning, and none of them knew where it would lead. But one thing was certain. Their lives were quietly, beautifully, becoming intertwined. As summer moved closer, the days became warmer, and the land turned bright with sunlight. Caleb's ranch, once quiet and still, now felt alive in a new way. The sound of Naya's laughter filled the air. The steady rhythm of Ayanna's gentle voice brought peace. And the simple moments they shared together became pieces of a bigger story that none of them had expected. Ayanna and Naya continued visiting the ranch, sometimes spending whole days helping Caleb with chores or simply enjoying the calm around them. The more they visited, the more natural everything felt, like they weren't guests anymore, but a part of the place itself. Caleb had always known the ranch felt big for one man, but he never paid attention to the emptiness until now. Seeing Ayanna move around the kitchen with calm hands, or watching Naya chase butterflies near the barn, made him realize how quiet his life had been before they arrived. Their presence didn't fill the ranch with noise, it filled it with warmth. One afternoon, as the sun was setting behind the hills, Caleb and Ayanna sat outside on the porch. Naya was nearby, playing with Rusty, her cheerful voice drifting toward them like music. The golden light of evening touched the fields, turning everything soft and peaceful. Caleb glanced at Ayanna. "Your people must be preparing to move for the new season." Ayanna nodded slowly, her eyes focused on the horizon. "Yes. Soon we will follow the path the elders choose. It is our way." The words made Caleb's heart feel heavy. He had known this moment would come, but he had hoped time would move more slowly. "How far will you go?" he asked. "Not too far," she said gently, "but far enough that we will not visit often." Caleb looked down at his hands. Naya will miss the horses. And the horses will miss her, Ayana replied with a small smile. She talks about them every night. There was a long pause, the kind that held more meaning than words could explain. Caleb felt something inside him stirring something he had been trying to ignore, even though it had grown stronger with every passing day. He took a quiet breath. Ayana, I know our lives are different. Our ways are different. But, he hesitated, trying to find the right words. I care about you. Both of you. Ayana turned her face toward him, her expression calm but full of emotion. Her voice held a warm truth that settled gently into his heart. But she wasn't smiling. Instead, she looked thoughtful, almost torn. Caleb, she began. You are kind. You give without expecting anything back. You opened your home to my daughter when she needed help. You have always treated us with respect. These things mean a great deal to me. Caleb listened closely, waiting. But, she continued softly, my life follows a path that belongs to my people. I cannot walk away from it. I cannot ask my daughter to walk away from it either. Her words weren't harsh, they were honest, full of respect. Caleb nodded slowly, even though the heaviness stayed in his chest. I understand, he said, though his voice was quiet. Ayana looked at him with gentle eyes. Our paths may be different, but that does not mean they cannot walk side by side sometimes. Her words brought him a little comfort. Still, he felt unsure. Do you mean you'll still come by? If the land allows it, she said, and if your heart welcomes it. Caleb managed a small smile. My heart already has. They shared a quiet moment. Neither reached for the other, neither moved closer. But something passed between them, something real, grounded in truth, trust, respect, and feelings too sincere to deny. Before they could say more, Naya ran up to them with a bracelet of wildflowers she had made. She offered it proudly to Ayana. For you, Mama, she said. Ayana smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead. Caleb watched them, his heart both full and aching. Moments like this made him wish things were simpler, but he respected Ayana too much to wish her away from her people. The next day, Ayana and Naya visited again. And the day after that, it was as if they wanted to make the most of the time that remained. Naya spent nearly every minute with the horses, brushing them, braiding pieces of grass into their manes, and talking to them as if they understood every word. Ayana helped Caleb gather herbs from the field behind the barn. She showed him how to store them, how to dry them for tea, and how to identify the plants that carried calming scents. As they worked, their hands sometimes brushed lightly. Each time, a soft, warm feeling spread through Caleb. But neither of them pulled away. They didn't need to speak about their growing bond. It was there, in the way Ayana smiled at him, in the way Caleb noticed her presence even before she spoke, and in the way Naya happily held both their hands as they walked. But time, as always, moved forward. A few days later, Ayana arrived at the ranch earlier than usual. Caleb saw the way she sat on her horse, straight, steady, yet thoughtful. Naya rode beside her, quiet but not unhappy. Caleb walked out to meet them. Everything all right? Ayana nodded. Yes. But today, we begin preparing for our travel. The words landed softly but firmly, like a feather that somehow felt heavy. Naya slid down from her horse and ran to Caleb. Will you come visit us? She asked, her big eyes hopeful. Caleb crouched down to her level. Of course I will, he said gently. You just tell me where to go. Naya smiled and hugged him tightly. Ayana watched them with soft eyes. Ayana stepped closer. I came today to thank you once more, for everything you have done for us. You don't need to thank me, Caleb said slowly. I'm grateful I met you both. Ayana lowered her gaze briefly, then looked up again. Our paths may separate soon, she said. But I believe they will meet again. I hope so. Caleb replied quietly, meaning every word. Ayana reached into the small pouch at her side, the same one she had used months ago when she gave Caleb the woven bracelet. She took out another item, this one larger. A small, handmade charm made of leather, beads, and smooth stones. It was beautifully crafted and carried the natural colors of the land. "This is for you," she said, holding it out. "It is a gift of peace and guidance. Keep it with you. It will remind you that kindness travels far." Caleb accepted it with deep respect. "Thank you," he said, his voice low. "I'll take good care of it." Ayana nodded once, gracefully. "I know." Naya tugged at her mother's hand. "Can we come back tomorrow before we leave?" Ayana looked at Caleb. "If it is all right with you." Caleb smiled warmly. "Always." And they did come back the next morning, one last visit before their journey. Caleb walked with them across the fields, showing them the young plants he had recently planted. Letting Naya feed the horses one more time, Ayana stood beside him the whole time, speaking softly, sharing quiet thoughts, and listening to his. When it was time to go, Naya hugged Caleb tightly once again. "I'll come back," she said, with childlike certainty. Caleb smiled. "I'll be right here waiting." Ayana stepped forward. She didn't say many words, but she didn't need to. Her eyes held everything: gratitude, respect, warmth, and a bond that neither time nor distance could erase. "Take care, Caleb," she said softly. "You too, Ayana," he replied. "And thank you for trusting me." She met his gaze for a long, quiet moment. Then she turned and mounted her horse. Naya climbed up behind her. They waved once more before riding away, the sunlight catching their silhouettes as they moved toward the open land. Caleb stood there, long after they disappeared from sight. The ranch felt quiet again, but not empty. Not anymore. The memories of their laughter, their conversations, and their warm presence stayed with him like sunlight that lingered even after the sun had set. He looked down at the charm Ayana had given him and held it carefully. Their worlds were different, but their connection was real. And somewhere deep inside, Caleb felt certain that their story wasn't over. Not yet. And perhaps someday, when the time was right, the land would bring them together again, just as it had on the very first day he found Naya by the dry creek bed. Until then, he carried their memory with him, quietly and warmly, like a promise waiting to be fulfilled.